Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bold Moves Business Podcast. I am very pleased and excited to introduce Graham Skidmore to you today. Graham understood and played the game of life according to the status quo and checked the boxes of a six-figure income, nice house, car, country club membership, etc. However, at the height of his success was also the height of his misery. Becoming a burned out, miserable, and unfulfilled corporate executive turned out to be his catalyst for healing physically, emotionally, and spiritually through what he teaches as the cycle of personal growth, restoration of his genuine and authentic self, and the reclamation of the connection with his higher and total self. As a result of his experiences, he believes we can create a world of happy, healthy, productive, and empowered people. He believes the best way to achieve this is by investing in people as individuals and their potential. He's come to understand part of his purpose as creating the tools, education, systems, and community necessary to create a human-centric ecosystem with AI as a tool to augment human intelligence and capabilities. Welcome, Graham.
Wow. All right. Yeah, that was all right. We set the table pretty well there. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
For
that's
the
the
kind
background.
intro. And yeah, that's been my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no stranger to building something only to be left unsatisfied and tearing it all down and starting over again. So let's talk about that moment. So you describe the height of success,
Yeah.
also the height of misery. Can you take us back? What was that turning point that made you say no more and walk away?
Yeah. Well, it was in full transparency. It wasn't just my decision, right? I was in an organization for 21 years, and you know, when I started the company, there was 400 people. When I left, there was 20,000. So there was a lot of growth that we all experienced and things and along those lines. But, the skills and abilities that are needed to take you from 400 people to 20,000 are definitely different than what it is to maintain 20,000. Right. And so things definitely weren't clicking for me for a while. I was very unhappy. And, and it showed through in my work. It showed through in my relationships with people. There was a lot of challenges with misunderstanding, communication, a lot of stuff that obviously made sense in hindsight that we'll cover here. But yeah, so it was kind of like I sat down with the CEO who I reported to, and he was like, "Hey, this isn't working." I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's not." And so he's like, "Hey, I'd like to make some changes." And I was like, "All right, well, let's talk about it." And I was like, yeah, no, it's time for me to go. Now, obviously, I'm condensing the situation, but that's really what it was. And it was a big surprise to all of us because, I'd been there forever. Nobody thought I would leave. I never thought that I would leave, right? I thought it'd be the place I retire from. But it just got to a point where I just was, like you said, in the intro, if this is what playing the game of life is like, and if this is what checking the box gets me, I thought if I did this stuff, I was supposed to be happy, right? But I'm not. And so something's got to give here. And so I said, I just can't go on this way. And so I just stepped away, not knowing what it was, not knowing what the next step was going to be, except for it's got to be better than this. So I'll pause there. And and so that was kind of the catalyst that kicked off a whole retooling of my understanding of life, the game of life, myself, and my role in it, how to play it. Take your pick. Yeah.
Yeah, the game of life. It's sometimes it feels like it's really rigged against us. I've heard some people say, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to, to really believe that that's the way things are supposed to be. But yeah, I've worked with a lot of folks who had the same situation, walking away from corporate, feeling like there's got to be something more and building their own thing, right? That's something that really fulfills them. I think that's how most entrepreneurs come to be is they see something out there that others don't see that they need to build, right? That's that soul's calling. And sometimes it's more than just burnout because we do talk about people burning out, corporate professionals burning out, but you went through what sounds like more like a full spiritual and emotional overhaul as well. So what did that journey actually look like in those early days?
Yeah, I definitely went through a variety of overhauls as I lived and learned. And you're right, my own lived experience definitely led me to what I'm stepping into now. And so so after I left, again, I grew up understanding myself through a very kind of normal or traditional lens. I thought of myself as I guess, a normie, albeit kind of quirky or misunderstood and, things like that. But yeah, there you go. Right. But I was like, but that was kind of about the extent of it. And so I was like, all right, so let me go. I got to get happy before I can figure out anything else that I do in life. I've got to figure out why why I feel so crappy all the time. And so I went through, again, a Western lens, and I went to the doctors and I was like, hey, what's going on with me here? And so, we went through the stuff, and they were like, all right, well, hey, let's give you some diagnoses. So I was diagnosed as autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, dyscalculia, alexithymia, Erland syndrome. And I was like, all right, that's cool. That gives me enough to work on right there. Yeah, I don't need it. I don't need any more right now. Let me just try to digest these things, and we'll figure it out from there. Right. So obviously those, that insight, was very helpful. It helped me to, it gave me a vernacular to speak from. It gave me words to emotions and experiences that I struggled to figure out before. It obviously allowed me to fill in the blanks with some disconnects in communication and understanding and stuff, in the past. In my corporate world and things like that. But then the same way that words lift us up, words can bring us down. And so the more that I kind of leaned into that understanding of myself through those labels and those identities, the more I all of a sudden was boxed in. And then the more that the symptomatic aspects of that also started to come through. And I found myself going from this very confident individual to a perspective based in fear and anxiety. And, and then as a result of that, all of any other challenges that I had compounded, and I didn't know, and like my mental and physical state started to deteriorate even more. And I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to work again or what the situation was. And things were very scary. And so then, that led to going, okay, to kind of another breakdown, as well as a friend of mine, Jen Sunshine, said, hey, like, that you're like really, like psychic and stuff, spiritually gifted, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't, again, I wasn't a spiritual person. I never had these thoughts in my life. I didn't have any experiences. I didn't really lean into intuition, right? I was a very cognitive based individual. Everything had to be logic based, right? So essentially, early on in my life, I'd shut everything off, frankly, for my own personal preservation, because I didn't know how to handle all the overload. And so I was like, but then it still didn't make sense to me. I had to mess around with it for a little bit. Because to me, that was like, I didn't understand it, because my understanding of that viewpoint was very sensationalized through like sci-fi, pop culture, comic books, right? Things that were very different than the way I actually experienced and understand it, much more sensational versus practical, and the whole context was missing. And then the next part of that, which kind of happened a little bit down the road, she was like, hey, this is up to you, but I'm just letting you know that I'm kind of getting the nudge to nudge you to say, you may want to try a mushroom journey. Now, I had a lot of vices, going through my life, but, tapping into, drugs wasn't really one of them. And so I was always kind of cautious of that stuff. And for whatever reason, though, I had this feeling in my head that was like, look, if you do this, you go down this route, there's a lot of responsibility waiting for you on the other side of this. There's going to be a lot of change. And so if you don't do anything until you're ready for it. So it took me about 6 months then to go through, and, where I kept understanding myself and my wiring differently before I was willing to kind of go through that journey and go through what was on the other side. And so, I had a few, this then went into my second or third kind of overhaul along the way. I went down that path that opened up a whole can of worms of understanding and knowledge and things of that nature. And so then I started to understand, and that was kind of when I started to, I just call it, for me, it was a unlocking of knowledge or information for me. Mm-hmm. That really kind of came through on the other side. And so then I spent the next handful of years, 6-7 years, understanding myself. I already done the Western lens. So then it was more about the Eastern, indigenous, and spiritual lens of understanding myself, the game of life, the different beliefs, the different philosophies, and the same way that, so then I had my experiences, and then I would read things in, Eastern, oh yeah, that's what I experienced. And so again, I was able to obtain a vernacular, speak to things. And so my whole job from that point on was getting to understand myself, learning how to be comfortable in my own skin, reframing my histories of life from mistakes and fault and guilt and blame and shame and anxiety and fear into catalysts for growth, understanding that, everything happened for a reason, for lack of a better description. All of these things were happening were happening for me, not to me. And that's kind of how I started to understand the game of life differently, how to play it differently. And through all of those different lenses and that integration was really when the happiness and the healing started to come in. And so that was, anyway, so let me just pause there. And yeah, so it was a very interesting, it's been a very interesting 8 years.
Yeah, that's quite the journey, and that's a good friend that would, feel confident enough to speak that to you, to tell you what she sees in you that you might not have seen yourself. You clearly you didn't, that side of you. So, I mean, that was definitely a catalyst for you to move into that other world of going inwards, right? So, you started with the Western lens, and I believe words have power too. When we diagnose people, we can almost like see that as almost casting a spell on someone, because I
Yeah,
had my own experience with this medically, where something was happening to me. I was diagnosed, and then it got worse, because
yeah,
I sort of identified myself with it. And then as soon as I put that out of my head and out of my realm of consciousness, it like I never experienced it again. It was weird. Like, our minds are powerful, right? Is what I'm trying to say. Like,
absolutely.
so sometimes we create these things for ourselves, but Western medicine, sometimes is not exactly working in our favor. And so, do you find you had to find a balance between Western and Eastern practices, or are you leaning more towards the Eastern stuff now? How did that
Yeah.
work out for you?
Yeah, and so I mean, just for some context, so my next chapter of life is in the health and wellness space, and it's about integration, right? Because right now, even if you're in this, there things are, it's either the Western way or the Eastern way, or the Western way or the spiritual way, right, or the indigenous way, and none of them have all of the answers on their own, and they all have their, like you just talked about, the pros and the cons to them. So I'll use an integration term myself, which is breathing, right? I had respiratory issues my whole life, asthma specifically. And so, look, the Western approach and being able to have things like inhalers, uber helpful. But, after 40 some years, boy, would it be nice to not have that dependency on an inhaler, and being able to breathe. And so going into the Eastern lens and understanding both from breath work and also from how emotions tie into our organs, which then tie into, respiratory challenges, and as well as certain, and spiritually, certain things like grief and affecting the lungs, right? I recognize that in order for me to heal from, my asthma, it required all of that stuff, right? I had to heal my emotions. I had to learn how to breathe properly. I had to strengthen my lungs. And along the way, having Western medicine to open up the lungs through, pharmaceutical treatments was super helpful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and so that's the point, is that it's about how do we get all of this stuff to work together to heal at the root cause. And so for the first time this past winter, I was able to go outside, not have to suck on my inhaler within 3 seconds. I was able to breathe and really enjoy the winter and being outside in the cold for the first time in literally decades. So that was a pretty cool experience for me.
Yeah, amazing. We all want that, right?
Yeah.
Not to have so much dependency on these things, of course. Well, let's talk about that personal growth cycle. So you teach something called the cycle of personal growth.
Yeah.
Can you break down for anyone listening here what that is in plain terms? Where does someone typically enter that cycle?
Boy, sorry, let me try to not go down a rabbit hole here. So the concept of Earth as a classroom or a living and learning experience is taught in a variety of places, right? But some of the meat on the bone about, okay, how is that? What are we here for? What are we, some of that is missing in certain cases. And so, so that's that curriculum and aspects of that curriculum are definitely things that, made themselves known to me. So the way that I describe it to people is, so the purpose of, our on Earth here is learning how to maintain love through adversity. So the same way that, in like astrology, each different planet has its knowledge, its energy, its learnings that are associated with it, right? So Earth is the same thing, right? And so it's maintaining love through adversity. But how do we maintain love through adversity? Why do we need to do that? The reason why we need to learn how to maintain love through adversity is because we're meant to be autonomous, independent, powerful beings. But just the same way, you don't give keys to a 15-year-old, and a fifth of booze, you essentially make sure that, they go through driver's training and education and have the wherewithal before you give them the keys to something that can be both a vehicle for transportation or, a demolition vehicle. Depends on how somebody uses it. So again, if we think about Earth through that lens, right? And so it gives us the ability to have trial and error. And so starting with that, how do we learn that, how to maintain the love through adversity is the understanding of divine love, to have the courage to do what is right while gaining the wisdom to act in the highest good of all through stewardship. And so if you think about different belief systems, different religions, and what they all represent, each one of them represents an aspect of that journey, right? And so that's what I teach is, hey, you actually created your own living and learning experience before you got here, right? Now, does that mean everything you encountered was predetermined and predestined? No. There's a conflict between the man-made intelligent design and the divine intelligent design. And what I mean by intelligent design is simply that it's intentional, purposeful, and designed to achieve a certain outcome, right? Just at a high level like that. It's not tied to any religion or belief system. And so, I literally just lost my thought on that. And so, so helping people to recognize that, look, before you got here, you designed a few things for yourself, your acts of service, your personal growth of what you wanted to learn, understanding, how to better love yourself, love others. Each person is a little bit different. So we're not all here to learn the same thing. We're not all here to learn the same ways. And so by helping people to understand that journey for themselves, that really allows us to go from, hey, you made a mistake, it was your fault, you messed up, into, no, that was a catalyst for you to learn. That was a catalyst for your personal growth. That was you went through that to recognize that even by not being perfect, you're still worthy of love. No matter what you do, you are inherently worthy of being supported. You are worthy of having a voice, worthy of being loved. And also, learning how to love others, right, through those things. And so so that's kind of where, that's the tip of the iceberg of kind of the frame up of what I share with people that are interested in kind of, learning that, better understanding the living and learning game they establish for themselves.
Earth is a school. I've heard that concept before. As I'm going through my own spiritual journey, I grew up mostly since teenagehood in evangelical church, and now I feel like I'm deconstructing from that a little bit. I think there's a lot of consciousness raising these days that's going on.
That's right.
And I definitely feel like I'm part of that. But you talk about before you got here, you chose these lessons, maybe not everything specifically, but you chose your path. And so would you say that the concept of reincarnation is something real? Or how does that work? How do we choose to be here? What is your take on that?
Yeah. So there's two ways to look at consciousness. One is once you're born, you gain consciousness, or the other is you were a being of consciousness then that took on physical form.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously I teach the latter, which is, no, you're a being of consciousness that happened to take on physical form to have a physical living and learning experience. And so things like, psychism or channeling or mediumship, that's just a way that you designed your own physiology to help you with your journey. It isn't necessarily an indication of spiritual evolution or one person or a group being more evolved than the other. It's just the way that they wired themselves based on what they wanted to learn. And I think that's, some of that gets lost a lot. And as you can tell, right, and so there's a lot of, and you started to talk about the deconstructing and things, and this is what I went through and getting back to the genuine and authentic self. When I didn't understand that I was wired to be able to tap into the information, the energies around me, yes, it was nervous energy. It was sensory overload. It caused me a lot of pain and challenges, and not understanding myself, not recognizing that I was picking up on others' thoughts, emotions, body sensations and feelings as part of my gifts. And so, it was, but then without recognizing that this stuff wasn't mine, it was darn near impossible to figure out how to get rid of it, right? Because I didn't understand the cause properly. So that was what I spent a lot of that time, over the last 7, 8 years, understanding and separating that self, kind of like a car radio. If you're in between stations, boy, it's a lot of static. You got everything coming at you, right? But once you can tune in appropriately, then all of a sudden you've got clarity and you can hear and everything like that. And so I have a body that can pick up a variety of stations at one time, but I just didn't know it, and I certainly didn't have anything dialed in. And so that created a lot of health challenges for me that I wasn't able to fully understand and resolve through strictly a Western lens.
So how do people recognize what they've lost in finding their genuine and authentic self? Like, how do we tune in to that?
Yeah, well, I think the first step is recognizing that no matter what you've experienced, is like somebody has to step back and believe about themselves that no matter what they've gone through, no matter what they've experienced, their genuine and authentic self, they never were broken. They're not broken. They didn't get the bum end of the DNA lottery. They, whatever they have, it was not, and I know this can be challenging because, we all give ourselves different pieces of adversity to learn from. So that doesn't mean that all of our bodies, quote unquote, work perfectly according to the man-made intelligent design, but they work perfectly according to what we designed based on what we needed to experience, what we needed to learn. And so recognizing that we are individuals with an individualized physiology designed to support our individual journey is the first step. From there, it's then recognizing how the wisdom in the body and what it does and how it talks to us, and as well as understanding what we're here to do. And so what I mean, expand on that a little bit. If we're meant, remember it's stewardship. So we're also here to help each other and support each other. And so when we think about, being able to pick up on another person's feelings or physical sensations, if you're trying to help somebody heal, asking them, hey, when you get around somebody and all of a sudden you get stomach pains, or all of a sudden you have a back pain or things like that, learning how to recognize that you're taking on the energy of somebody else, bringing it to their attention. Because, in some cases we don't even realize it, right? We can become very conditioned and just used to our stuff, or we take our Advil because our back pain hurts, but without it, whatever it might be, right? I plenty of pills for plenty of years because I didn't understand those things. But then once somebody helped me to identify these challenges and recognize how some of them came as a result of me ignoring how my body was talking to me, then once I recognized how to listen to my body, those pains went away. Right? Because we're here to learn and we're here to take in that information. And so the body's like, hey, you designed me to tell you when you're in these situations. So here I am telling you. And if you keep ignoring me, I'm going to keep knocking louder, and I'm going to keep knocking louder. And so there ends up being a lot of ailments and illnesses and physical pains that are actually a result of that. And so and so it took me a long time to recognize, all of the things that, especially like, a lot of us that wired that way, have a very active, stomach area. And so being able to understand the different ways that our stomach is talking to us is not always indigestion. It's not always needing to go to the bathroom. But anyhow, I could go down a whole rabbit hole there.
Yeah, it's where we get the statement that my gut feeling, right? That comes from there, right? And I mean, there's some people who are more intuitive than others. I definitely feel like I am very intuitive person. But I feel you on that, your body talking to you bit, because I know I was really sick like during COVID, and it was like fear-based before I understood a lot of this stuff. And I was getting this like angioedema and anaphylaxis like every other day, which is insane. Like that's like can potentially be a life-threatening situation. And then when I stepped back to look at it, it was because of fear and anxiety. And when I cut that out, it stopped. It was incredible, without medicine, without anything.
Yeah, I'm so happy you figured that out for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that was a lesson I had to learn and go through that, right? But so then I started exploring that side of things, like, wait a minute, maybe some of this other stuff, and then connecting dots with past medical issues that I had. I was like, maybe that was because this horrible situation, or this, thing I was thinking, experiencing, feeling, and this came as a result of that. So it was very interesting to see that in my own life, and like having that firsthand experience, and then listening to experts. There's health podcasts I love listening to, and talking about this. It's like, aha, I connected that dot, and I'm glad to hear that the science actually backs that kind of thing. So it's very interesting how our minds and our bodies and what can manifest from that comes out or can come out. And it's not always about, taking a pill. It's about getting to the root cause and maybe changing our mindset on some things and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the other crazy thing was, like you said, how once you made that switch and switched your mindset, how long did it take for your symptoms to go away?
Like it was right away. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
And
what's
I
crazy.
went for years without having those symptoms again, like where I was having them every other day.
Yeah.
There's no other reason because I didn't do anything else. So
Yeah, we're meant to be able to take when we start to operate as our genuine, authentic selves, which being fear-based and anxiety is not our natural state, right?
no.
Being beings of love and recognizing that we're meant here to be here and safe, and right. And so I mean, what you've talked about is so powerful, and that's, I wish Western medicine acknowledges that sure, fear and anxiety affects us, but it does not nearly give it the credit that, like what you just discussed in your own experience and what I've experienced and so many other people have experienced. If we literally could just get everybody to operate from a place of love and remove that fear and anxiety, the amount of healing and the amount of, and it all affects us all differently, right? And this is one of the problems with Western medicine. They always want this 1-to-1 ratio. Well, fear manifested itself in this ailment to you, so that means it should be that way to this person. Well, it's not.
Yeah, no.
Right. And so therefore they struggle with the diagnoses and how to create a system and a framework around it because of that. And they want to make it about a biomarker. And, in some cases, there's some commonalities with biomarkers because, the body's got to be able to trigger something, but it's not the end all be all answer. And it's certainly not healing at the root cause of things. And it's not. And while there's a time and a place for pills, look, I definitely was on my share of antidepressants and otherwise. And we all, and I certainly don't judge. We all got to do what we got to do to get by. But there does come a point where you can't continue to override the body and quote unquote biohack it, whatever it is, without there being additional reactions or consequences in other places.
Yeah, definitely. And I do believe our bodies are very intelligent and set up to heal themselves, but we need to know how to tap into that as well. Well, let's talk about the two brands that you're building. I know you've got a couple things going on, Harmony Health Institute and SaaS Solutions. And I love the people-centric approach that you have with both of those brands. How do those two worlds connect? One is spiritual side, wellness side, the other's tech, or is it more integrated than that?
No, they're actually extremely integrated. And to me, to my understanding of spirituality and how the spiritual systems are connected and the architecture of that is what gives me the knowledge to be able to know how to architect the tech. So it's one and the same to me. And so SaaS Solutions is a for-profit entity. Harmony Health Institute is a nonprofit entity. SaaS Solutions creates the education tools, systems, to be able to support the individualized care, individualized understanding, and the supporting systems, and it donates those to Harmony Health. And then Harmony Health, then provides the research and development area, the use cases, the case studies, the ability just to help people. And, because if I need that type of a proving ground to be able to create systemic change, right? So the Harmony Health Institute will always focus strictly on helping people. But once I've then demonstrated a scalable model for providing individualized care with the education tools and systems, then SaaS Solutions is able to, license that. I haven't figured out the monetization model because just working with and helping people is the first priority. But then that's how that allows me to do that. And then I can also take any of the, the profits and the revenue generated from the for-profit entity and donate that to the nonprofits. And so I've also then got that circular relationship, and reciprocal relationship.
Sweet. And you're partnered up with the doctor I see on your website there as well.
Oh yeah, Dr. Jamie.
Dr. Jamie, yeah.
Yeah, she's a doctorate in physical therapy. She's almost completed her chiropractic, and then I think she has her doctorate in counseling as well.
Very nice, very nice. I love that. Let's talk about AI now. I know that's a big thing these days, right? Everybody's using AI, and we're all afraid it's coming for our jobs and all that kind of thing. But you talk about it augmenting intelligence rather than replacing it. What does a human-centric AI ecosystem look like?
Yeah, so essentially, my focus is how do I use AI to help people to understand themselves as an individual, realize their potential, and then, operate and live life at their potential. And then I think that applies both in our personal journeys and our professional work. And so, let's just kind of, we just talked about all these different ways of getting to understand ourselves, right? The body's intelligent, but fear, and anxiety affect us, but it doesn't always look the same in each and every person. So how do we figure that out? How do we incorporate Western teachings, Eastern teachings, indigenous spiritual, to figure out where should we be focused on understanding ourselves? Well, technology provides us that opportunity, gives us that framework. It can provide us that list of questions. The biggest difference for the way that I look at it and build it is when you work, and again, I'm not saying every single tool, but generally speaking, the AI tools out there, the focus is give up your agency to us. We're going to tell you what to do and what the best thing is for you to do. And it's kind of this, and it's an extension of this one size fits all model and belief systems. Where my focus is, hey, let me connect you with information, but let me help you to figure out what to do with it for yourself based on your goals, your criteria. So, me, it's more about, it's like a better description, understanding the questions to ask yourself, the decision trees, and providing decision trees to figure out how to know what works for you, how to incorporate it, is it working for me, et cetera. And the same thing, that same kind of framework applies in a professional environment where you can leverage AI to do the heavy lifting and bringing all of the information together, but you should still use your subject matter expertise, your ability to interpret, your ability to apply context and the goals and things like that to provide the outcome. And so, I think, what we're seeing right now with our approach to AI is reflective of these one size fits all systems that school, right? It conditions it where we go to school to be conditioned how to fit into a system, how to think the same way as everybody else. And then and then our ability, and then we reward that by giving people degrees. Right. And so now essentially it becomes AI is an optimization tool because we're all meant to live inside the same box. And and as opposed to teaching us how to be free thinkers, creative problem solvers, et cetera. So anyway,
most of the systems we have are set up to just have us give up our agency to them, right? And most people are happy to do that. I think, I don't know if it's like laziness or just we're overwhelmed. And I mean, a lot of life is kind of set up that way, if you ask me. I'm going to get my conspiracy hat out here in a minute, but
no, yeah. So here, I'll jump in there too. And I think that one of the challenges with that is that there's a lack. First of all, there's a lack of enough of a discussion on the other side of that, right? Which is why we shouldn't be giving up our agency. And so that's what a lot of my work in education and your story, like what you just talked about, your story and how you were able to heal and how much, and getting back to your natural, genuine, authentic self by getting rid of that fear and anxiety and how that helped you, right? Is that the more that, and there's all kinds of people out here that talk about, their stories. So this is, but we need to spend more time talking about how great humans are, how we're able to be autonomous, and the potential that exists inside of all of us when we're properly supported. And the more that we provide those examples, then the more that people recognize there's another choice. Because I think that's what's again, putting on my idealism hat and, and saying that I think a lot more people are pro-human than pro-AI, but what they lack are recognizing that there's options and choices available. And because we're all taught to kind of be the same way and think the same thing, we aren't inherently thinking that there's more to the potential of being a human than what we already see in front of us. And so therefore, why should we invest in humans as individuals? We should be investing as AI to lift us up as a tool. And so that's obviously the exact opposite. My approach with the Harmony Health Institute is, hey, I'm going to show you what the potential is of these people, where they were here and now they're here, where their quality of health was here and now they're here. And by continuing to provide all of these use cases and evidence-based situations, now we challenge that other side of the discussion that says that AI is our only future, and saying, no, look what all of these people were able to do and their quality of life and their contributions and their potential when they were properly supported. And this is why we should be investing in humans as individuals. And so that's kind of all of my work is about creating that other side of the discussion.
Yeah, there's always another choice. And that's why I started this podcast, to just show people, like, if you hate what you're doing right now, there's another way, surely, that, you can dream up for yourself, right? All these folks I have on my podcast, they talk about, the before and after, what they were doing before and how they changed things for themselves. So it's giving it that inspiration to people. I'm forever preaching this as well. And, how I feel called to help people is now by my research and because of what happened during COVID and businesses got shut down, I ended up coming across the path of like living in the private, right? And setting up your business in the private domain so that you are free from this overreach and overregulation. And I feel like we're shifting into that consciousness of like, wait a minute, why do I feel like I don't have any freedom? Why do I feel like a cog in this machine that I never consented to all this, stuff, right? So it's being that voice that's like, yes, there is another way. You don't have to, like the amount of people that have said to me, oh, can I do that? It's like, yes, you can do anything. You are a creator, right?
Yeah.
You are a creator. We've forgotten that. And we've just become these consumers. And that's why one of the reasons why we're so miserable, I think.
Look, I would tell you, look, this. So many of our problems are a result of the conflict between the man-made intelligent design and the divine intelligent design, right? The man-made intelligent design, it's about consumption, and it's about a parasitic relationship with our surroundings versus being a creator and a symbiotic relationship, right? It's everything and the perspective in which we speak. It's from fear of missing out, right? I'm doing this because I don't want this to happen. Right. And so all of those things, we're just so used to and conditioned to being around all of this fear and anxiety that we don't even recognize it anymore. And you're right. And so we've normalized, everybody's got something wrong with them. It's just a thing. Right. As opposed to saying, wait a second here. The systems are broken, not the people.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And as we talk about what's going on right now, you call it Earth's next evolution into a justice through restoration period.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Explain that to us. And
boy,
why does it matter for entrepreneurs right now?
That's a great tie-in right there. So I've referred to it as the justice through restoration, meaning because we're going to be experiencing a phase where we are restoring Earth to operate in alignment with the divine intelligent design, right? Right now, you've got the man-made intelligent design, and then the divine intelligent design. So now we're flip-flopping it. I'm doing a hand teeter-totter for anybody listening to demonstrate how it's going to flip-flop, right? And so that's where like a lot of this chaos and uprooting that we're seeing out there. People say, "Oh my gosh, the world's on fire." No, it's just correcting itself, and we need these catalysts to create change. Because without and so I have a very different outlook on as a result of that, on the current states. And so why is that so important? Well, again, as beings of consciousness, and like we talked about, we all kind of created our own living and learning environment. So we have all kinds of people that before they incarnated, they already, gave themselves the ideas, the tools, the intelligence, and the wherewithal to create systems that are much more aligned with the divine intelligent design and operating and supporting that way, right? Businesses that are rooted in empathy and stewardship. And so, and with the technological advancements, you no longer need, all of the manpower to do things, to build a business and to create scale. You no longer need all of the capital to be able to do those things if you have the aptitude or even just a couple of the right people around you. And so, as things continue to change, you're going to see, more of those people start to emerge, and those businesses start to pop up, and this kind of restoration. This is an example where, look, as part of a classroom and Earth going through cycles is something that's taught and discussed in many of the Eastern indigenous and spiritual communities. This isn't, again, anything new. It's just not as discussed so much in the Western side of things, right? But Earth going through its cycles is very common in many other places in the world. So think of it, I only say that to kind of, destigmatize it, not make it seem like, oh my gosh, the world's going to, everything's coming to an end. But yeah. And so whether or not that the amount of pain that we all have to go through that learning through this, period, whether this period lasts a few years or 50 years, right? the end result is etched in stone, but the journey is not, right? That's all going to be up to humanity and how we choose to engage with it, the actions that we take, whether we choose, and so, yeah, you're going to see quite a few people that try to hang on to the status quo, and you're going to see quite a few people that are really wanting to usher in the new. And they're definitely going to be, things at odds and clashes where you're going to have one set of people that are really focused on an AI-centric, future, and another group that's really focused on that human-centric future, right? Where we believe in consciousness, and collecting to a collective consciousness is a way for us to advance our intelligence. We don't have to give up our agency to AI.
Yeah, well, I hope the human-centered side wins, and I hope that they do it soon, because things are getting crazy out here. But like you say, things are falling into place, and the cracks are showing where we need to focus. And I see it too. I'm part of a community called New Earth Creator Academy. So yeah, so I'm totally with you there. It's just this. It's encouraging people, like, okay, this is the time. Like, if you have a soul calling and you're not acting on it, like, you were put here now for a reason. Like, there's a reason why you're here right now. So get out of fear and do that thing, right? They're really encouraging people to, exit these systems and build your own thing, which I love. And I see that happening a lot around me. Not only in this program that I'm part of, but just kind of everywhere. There's this shift. So I'm really rooting for all that to happen, and to happen in my lifetime too. I would love to see, something new.
You'll see it in your lifetime. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear you saying that.
Yeah, don't be wrong. I mean, it's going to get, look, it's definitely going to get uglier before it gets better, right? Just because we need those catalysts, because we still haven't been pushed to the point as a society to say, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to stand for. This is what we are, right? And so we're going to need some of that, we're going to, so anyhow, yeah, but yeah, it definitely is going to get better. And I think the more that all of us listen to our intuition, listen to our gut, act on, those things, and we start to build and we start to create, and we provide those extra set of choices and options, and showing there's another path, and showing how, no, feeling crappy is not just part of the human condition. We are actually capable of being happy and healthy individuals. And there's plenty of that to go around. We can all be that way.
Yeah. Amen to all of that. Amen. So how do you see, you talked about, because there's going to be folks that want to hang on to the old paradigm.
Oh yeah.
Right, as well as the new earth creators. How do you see those two worlds merging together, or are we just going to exist on separate frequencies or something? Like, how do you see that working out? And we're getting real deep here. We're getting real.
No, this is not. Look, I got to say, that was something I really wrestled being comfortable with for a very long time in my journey, and understanding my purpose and what I needed to do, because it doesn't feel good to me to not be open to everybody, right? However, if I'm open to everybody, then I also don't provide a safe environment for the new to grow and to flourish, right? Mm-hmm. So just like in a science experiment, you have a control and challenger, and then in order for that challenger to have a place to grow, it requires its own space, and it requires boundaries around that space. And so, look, I think you're going to see a combination of things. You're going to see some existing optimization within the broken system, trying to make some things a little bit better. But then you're going to see, absolutely, completely different frequencies or different societies, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to start to see more of that become more profound. But without, and that's where with the Me and Harmony Health, and I've got. We'll just stick to the Harmony Health Institute. While we're open to everybody, the three groups that are really our specialties are women, neurodivergent, and spiritually gifted, because these are people that have a different physiology and a different wiring that are underserved and not properly supported. And the only way to help these people realize their potential is to provide a kind of a walled off environment for them to be their genuine and authentic selves, to learn about that, which if they're living in the status quo and trying to play the game by the status quo, they're never going to get to that spot. So, there's in some ways there has to be some of that separation in order for the growth to occur, and in order for people to demonstrate what's possible when people are properly supported, we need to have those healthy boundaries in place to provide us a place for the new to emerge.
Yeah. Well, we got to this system somehow, so everyone's in it. So if we can tip the scales, I think perhaps there will be you just kind of have to, or you just kind of have to evolve, otherwise you get left behind, kind of thing. I don't know. We'll see, but I guess time will tell. It's definitely a very interesting time to be alive right now. So,
there's no doubt about it. But yeah, yeah. The more that we can show how self-healing and learning how to trust ourselves, trust our instincts relies and result in more people being happy and healthy. That's going to be the most powerful statement that we have to help move society along.
I love that. I love that. Well, let's tell people where they can find you. We've got a couple websites I'm going to put up here. HarmonyHealthInstitute.com and SaaStechnology.com as well. Do you want to explain your free gift that you've got for our audience?
Yeah. So if you've been listening, and you're like, hey, this guy's not crazy, it's kind of interesting what he has to say, and I'd love to understand more about my journey, and I'd like to understand how that's having an adverse effect on my life, because I'd like to be happier and healthier. Then I love watching people better understand themselves and understand and heal, right? And so I'm happy to offer a free session to help people understand the kind of problem. Most likely, most people are stuck in a learning cycle that they're not realizing, and so they keep experiencing this loop of being introduced to something, and so being able to help people recognize that loop, giving them the information of how to handle it, so that they get the learning out of it, and then they're able to let it go. And then, as well as however that was having a negative or adverse effect on their life, will also go away the same way that you discussed how it went away in your life when you got rid of that fear and anxiety.
Yeah, sometimes you just need that first step, that unlocking moment. Right?
That's right.
Okay, and then we can find you on socials. Are these the best ones for you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Graham Skidmore, and then on YouTube, and Understanding the Science of You, as well as I Didn't Come with an Owner's Manual. Those are my podcasts and my video series, which are focused on explaining more detail about Earth's intelligent design and how, and the curriculum and how it's designed and the purposes of different things. And then the Understanding the Science of You podcast provides more real life examples of people navigating life as that being of consciousness.
Nice. And you've got a book coming out by the same name. I Didn't
Come
with an Owner's Manual. When can we expect that?
That's a great question. One of the
No pressure.
No, I will, believe me. It's this is when I operate on these are both G's. I operate on God's time, not Graham's time. Whether somebody identifies as God, creator, source, universe, all the same thing to me. I just use God versus Graham because they're both G's, and so it goes that way. But yeah, I would have thought that I would have started. I've got some of it done, but I would have thought that I would have been farther along. But apparently, universe is isn't quite there, and so I'm hoping before the year's over that I put it out. But yeah, what it'll do is it will explain the curriculum. It will explain a lot more of why things are the way that they are, so that people have the education to learn how to navigate things on their own, to reduce that fear and anxiety, to reduce the pain, and to get rid of the ailments, illnesses that occur as a result of that conflict between the man-made and divine intelligent design. So
awesome. Perfect. Well, that sounds great. I know writing a book is no small task. I have not done that myself, but I know of authors, and it's a whole thing. So good on you for even starting that process. So yes, please get a hold of Graham if this sounds interesting to you. And it's a breath of fresh air to know that entrepreneurs like you are out there who are anchoring this technology side of things in morality and purpose and the evolution of the human experience. So I thank you for tapping into that and bringing that into our reality, and for your time today.
Well, I thank you for using your platform to allow me to talk about this and to be able to share this with a larger audience.
Yes, yes. It's awesome to have you here, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. So please give Graham a follow on socials and get a hold of him for that. Sounds like an amazing session with you. So I might have to hop
It's,
on one myself.
I would love it. It's certainly enjoyable and eye opening. It's certainly fun.
Very good. I might have to take you up on that, Graham. Well, thank you
Please
for
do.
your time today, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye for now.
Take care.